For today's cup of coffee with Scream, I have waited for this moment for months. I have oldest kid with me today.
I am present.
And he has just issues. I mean, that's why perpetually the prayers for our family, all of us. And youngest kid was going to make a video about the Mother's Day car accident. So we'll wait on that. That was not how I wanted to spend my day.
Well, clusterfucks are often unexpected.
Yeah. But it's a perpetual clusterfuck, and it's like, does it really? What happened? We really need somebody to do a family reading to find out what the hell happened. Don't want to know? You just gonna roll with it.
I'm worried we're going to find out we've been driving backwards or something.
That's quite possible. Well, I was sitting still at the stop sign when it happened. But one of the reasons I wanted him up here, he has researched so much. And it's like talking to a college professor on a lot of this stuff. And he will say some of these things, and I'm like a deer caught in the headlights. And I was like, what? But just brilliant. We had the Pentagon released the first drop of the UFO UAP disclosure information things there on Friday, May the 8th, 2026. And we were recording this on May the 12th, 2026. And a day or so prior to this, televangelist Perry Stone, I have stories to tell about that man, released a video discussing a secret meeting, which was organized by people with government connections who wanted certain pastors to prepare their congregations about topics of UFOs and alien life. And the internet went wild. I mean, X was crazy. There was bukus of videos over on YouTube. Now, Joe Rogan had interviewed Tennessee Representative Tim Burchett. I like Tim Burchett a lot, who is part of the UAP caucus. That's what they call it. And these are advocates for disclosure, just transparency. And that includes Anna Paulina Luna, Jared Moskowitz, and Eric Burleson. And this is a bipartisan issue. It's one of the few things that these people have agreed on.
Yes, which makes me suspicious.
Yeah. And during the interview, Rogan had mentioned a pastor named Didio, which I had never heard of before, and neither had Tim Burchett. So went down that rabbit hole. Who is this person? Why are they mentioning him? What is he saying?
Why does his name sound like it ought to be Daddy-O?
Hey, that's true. That's true. And there was a pastor that I had heard of before, Pastor Mike Sipgnorelli. Are you familiar with him?
No.
And that he took part in this secret meeting. And it also featured, and I've got links. I've got all kinds of links for you if you want to go and watch these things for yourself. I urge you to do so. And the other pastors that were featured in this video were Alan Didio, Joseph Z, and Josh Hamstra. I'm not familiar with any of them. I'm not besmirching their ministries, nothing like that. But I will tell you, all of them have ministries, swag, books, etc.
Yes, as far as amongst the evangelical crowd, they fall very much into the influencer genre.
Yeah.
I noticed the absence of people from any of the other Christian denominations or people with lesser platforms. They seem to have primarily been interested in people who are going to be able to motivate a propaganda machine, one might say.
And there's other ministers that I have been familiar with for years that's talked about this stuff. Chuck Misler, Michael Heiser, Gary Stearman, L.A. Marzulli. L.A.'s got a little bit of used car salesman in his delivery. He really does. But he's, for years, decades on this trail. Mondo Gonzalez and then Timothy Alberino. Are you familiar with him?
Him I know, yeah.
And so the ones who shed enlightenment, pun intended just for oldest kid, about this mess was a video by Alberino, Gonzalez, and Marzulli. And honestly, it was, like I said, I've got links to all this stuff. And Alberino explained that he knew the people who had organized the meeting, and that while they have some government ties, they were not from the government. Whereas these other ones, they were pushing that we are elected, we are elite, we are here to calm down, all that stuff. But yes, like Kid said, and Kid is Catholic. And I wanted to know why none of the Catholics or any of these other people, why not, why just the prosperity preachers for the most part?
Well, if I come at it from the charitable angle and try not to prognosticate too much, I would say that within the Catholic Church, it's kind of a moot question. It's not something that nominal Catholics are particularly interested in one way or another. Theologically, it wouldn't really have any impact if aliens were or if they weren't. But if I was to be a bit more conspiratorial, I would say that any of the people with the type of platform that they seem to be seeking out amongst the Catholic crowd probably would have been more skeptical than they would have been willing to accept for this particular operation.
Yeah.
Of a psychological variety.
I think it would have been interesting had they contacted and included Jimmy Akin.
He would have had probably more questions than they were willing to answer.
Absolutely. Jimmy Akin, if you're not familiar with him and his channel, he dives into a lot of the paranormal stuff. He's a very logical, reasonable individual. I like Jimmy Akin. Lots.
And very rational.
Yes.
Which may have excluded him from the list.
Mm-hmm. But these other ones have millions of subscribers, followers, whatever.
Yes.
And it's like, if you wanted to cause panic, something like that, I don't know, spread a false narrative, these are the very people that you would have done.
Yes. Well, and that's something that amongst that crowd, there has been a historical tendency towards to begin with. Mm-hmm. So I suppose they picked the people with the right skill set.
Mm-hmm. Especially Perry Stone. Now, Perry Stone, I have personal knowledge of this because I went to, I can't remember where in Tennessee that his compound is. It's huge. We're talking, it has a coffee shop in it, all this stuff. I went there because I wanted to hear Mark Biltz of El Shaddai Ministries, because his ministry was very beneficial for me for many years because Hebrew roots. And he was the one, but I was astounded at just opulence, ridiculousness, when there's people in these communities that are needing help. Then the other one was when God sent me up to me and your brother, be glad he didn't send you with me, to, so I can't remember if it was Bluefield or someplace. It was relatively close, but it was in West Virginia. And that Perry Stone was there. And I argued with God. I'm like, Lord, I've already seen this. I don't want to go hear him again. And God's like, you go. So I went. And they had the event in, I don't know, it was some kind of, had been either like military, one of those big Quonset hut looking things that they had turned into maybe a community gym or whatever. That area, you talk about poverty. I mean, we live in a poverty area. The Appalachian Mountains, damn, it's all poverty. That's it. And so he had these big screen TVs set up that played for 30 or 40 minutes before he even took the podium. And at one point, he looks, I mean, it was not filled. Let's put it that way. He dared tell those people that other pastors, he had discussed that area with them, and that they had told him it was scorched earth. Not because of lack of faith, but lack of money. And I came out of there and I was livid.
Well, from my perspective, I can't argue against opulence in all circumstances. I think that there is a spiritual need for beauty in certain circumstances, but I would be hard-pressed to say that any of these megachurch types are making anything that is beautiful. Let's pick on the obvious one. When I see the Joel Osteen types in those kinds of churches,
his big friendship with Oprah,
it always calls Ozymandias to mind for me. Look upon my works, ye mighty, in despair.
Nebuchadnezzar tried that at one point too, didn't he? He ended up eating grass out in the field for 7 years.
Well, and it's the product of these cults of personality, I think, fundamentally. And they become altars to self. It's like self-aggrandizement.
Yes, it's dangerous.
Well, it's a work of pride.
A lot of it's blasphemous.
Yes.
I avoid people like that.
Oh, yeah, there's lots of danger inherent particularly amongst the prosperity gospel types, but not limited to them.
But it was just almost like a feeding frenzy. And what was interesting, even as far as Alberino, and he's sensible.
Well, he's an interesting character. I actually know a fair bit about him.
Yes, he was raised in the jungles in Peru when he was a kid and stuff.
And has been back many times since.
Yes.
So I've actually seen a number of interviews with him over the years, and when I say interesting, I am trying to be charitable with that. He's kind of on the kookier end, even by my metrics. You kind of have to take him with a grain of salt. I do think that he's an earnest person.
Yes.
But unfortunately, well, let me put it this way, because this will rope in some of our other personages in our conversation, similar to Anna Paulina Luna. Anytime people are leaning very heavily on the Book of Enoch, that raises my eyebrow.
Yeah.
And that's something that I've seen Alberino talk about probably half a dozen times over the last few years.
It's titillating.
Yes. Well, and it's an intellectual... What am I trying to get at? It takes attention away from the practical, like what you ought to be doing, and it intellectualizes those things. It's kind of a Gnostic reflex.
Right. Well, there's a reason that it was not put into canon.
Yes, and I mean, no offense to the Ethiopian church, whom I hold in good standing, but I also don't think that their view of the Book of Enoch is similar to Timothy Alberino's.
Right. Well, Michael Heiser, and you know that I adore Michael Heiser, and how much every day since this stuff has come up, I think, why did God take him now? Because this man would have looked at this stuff with a logical eye. The man was on the Art Bell 3 or 4 times, but he explained that as far as Ezekiel's wheel was not a UFO, that it actually was some kind of diadem or something that was very common in the Middle East at that time. That the people, you have to put scripture in with the people of that time because it was who it was written to. And we're not, believe it or not, the whole scripture was not written for Americas in 21st century.
You mean to say it wasn't handed down complete in physical form in King James English?
And it wasn't channeled either.
I thought I heard we found it on some golden tablets written in hieroglyphics. Should we not open that particular can of worms?
I love Tebba's cat. Sorry. Freaked kid out. He's not used to all the external chaos that goes on here.
Yes, most of my chaos is internal.
Yeah, well, that's just been typical for everybody these past few years. But he was such an intellectual, and he would talk about the paranormal in reference to scripture. Not that it wasn't there, because it does. I think he would be more along the lines of the interdimensional. And with the things that have been released by the government and stuff. And it's like, this has been something in the zeitgeist since, the 50s? They've been pushing it. They would never allow it to go out of the consciousness.
More or less, yeah.
Radio, TV, movies, everything. Since Roswell.
Yes. And so there's been some clear conditioning taking place over the course of generations on this topic.
Oh, yeah. And I forgot to include a link in my show notes. I actually did show notes today, which is unusual, because there was a gentleman that, in one of the things, I will go back and listen to Dr. Heiser's work, because there's no way that you can remember it all in just one sitting. There's no way that I could remember it all in more than one sitting. And that he had mentioned a gentleman that I was not familiar with at all. And if I can find his name right quick. But Dr. Heiser had mentioned a gentleman who his name is Guy Malone. And I had never heard of him either.
Neither had I.
And I found a video, and I'll include the link on this also, where he had spoken. I think he lives in Roswell, which is interesting. And it was July 6, 2025, and Mythbusting Ufology. And you want to go down a rabbit hole. I think I watched this past Saturday, and it was disturbing, because it was a matter of what we've all known. This relates a lot of it to Operation Paperclip.
Partially. When it comes to places like Roswell, I have often wondered if there isn't some kind of Truman Show thing going on there.
That very well could be.
Because if you look, there is actually in the public record now, at this point, we understand how they were conducting operations in places like Oak Ridge during the Manhattan Project. And that the entire population of that town basically was on the government payroll.
Yeah. I've driven through there.
And so the question is, how many places like that are there?
There was somebody, in fact, it was Tim Burchett. His parents worked at Oak Ridge. Different sections, neither one of them knew what the other one was working on.
That doesn't surprise me.
And all these people, if you listen close enough, there's ties back to something somewhere.
Yeah. And over the years, because this has been in the public consciousness for so long, of course, I've thought about it for an extended period of time. I only recently, and maybe this is not going to be a new idea to other people, but it was a revelation to me, realized that there might be another understanding for why all the secrecy and the compartmentalization and why we're doing this in this way.
Okay.
Because the thing I had always wondered is like, well, are we trying to keep this knowledge out of the hands of normal people if there's advanced technology or extra, whatever the truth of the matter ends up being? Or is it that we're trying to obfuscate things to our enemies? Well, if there are other beings, non-human intelligences, let's use the commonplace term these days, perhaps the thing that they're trying to accomplish by all the obfuscation is preventing those entities from understanding just how far along we've gotten in the research.
That's possible.
I only kind of had that realization the other day. Is like, that's the thing that makes the most sense for why it's being conducted in the way that it is.
That's possible. But now, Guy Malone, he very much discussed the horrific human experimentation that the Nazis, it wasn't just the Nazis that was doing it.
Yeah, it was the Japanese also.
Oh, yeah. Time. And God knows what's going on in China.
Sure. Well, and your viewers are going to be unfamiliar with my common epithets, but you at least will be familiar with the amount of times that I have said our technology has outstripped our ethics.
Oh, absolutely.
By decades. And I think a lot of that came out of that period in World War II. As an example, I don't know how common the information is, but the majority, a significant amount of the education that people get in medical school these days was the product of horrific torture, particularly by the Japanese.
Yeah.
Well, I've heard the statistic that it's like 75% of the human body is made of water. Do you know how we arrived at that number?
No.
The Japanese baked people.
Oh.
They weighed them before, and then they baked them until they were dry, and then they weighed them again.
Well, that makes sense then, doesn't it?
And so that's one of those things kind of just gets swept under the rug. And I don't know exactly what ought to be done. Like, ethically, should we be trying to profit from knowledge gained in this horrific manner, because that in some way you end up with this like retrocausal justification for the action. It's like, well, we learned so much. And I wonder if that's maybe not how we ended up kind of in the position we are now, where nobody even stops long enough to ask if they should do something anymore.
That's fallen angel stuff right there. It's fallen angel technology. It was the whole thing about the tree of knowledge. It wasn't that God was trying to hide something from people. He knew that they weren't ready for it yet.
Right. And that's another thing that I came to kind of understand slightly differently recently. Because I had thought for years that it was, it was there because what God desired from people was the free choice of obedience. But, for some reason I had operated under the idea that it was going to be there kind of as that for however long humanity was to exist in that form. But just within the last several months, I was like, oh no, it was probably they were meant to have it at some point.
Right.
But not now.
Right.
And if that doesn't just describe the human condition, I don't know what does.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, there's a thing that's possible. I want it now.
That's the 2 marshmallow thing. Have you heard about that? The children who...
Oh, yeah. High time preference versus low time preference.
Yeah.
And, we're making this decision that we want to populate all of the places on the planet that were capable of thinking about things before they acted with people who aren't.
Yeah. We're seeing horrific human experiment every time you look at the news.
Yes.
I mean, it's just... If we're not in the last days, we've missed a damn good chance of being there. I mean, it truly... There is a checklist to a certain degree, and I know people's like, oh, every generation's got this. No, not like this.
Well, that's probably what they said, too.
And, well, even as far as with the UFOs and the possibility of, and they did talk about Project Bluebeam, and that's there's people that believe it, and there's people that don't. There's people that tried to discredit the man. I think he was Canadian. I can't remember his name right now. Do you remember his name that came up with, I think it started with an S, but I can't remember. Let's say Signal or something like that. I don't know. And the Great Deception.
Yes.
And people's like, well, how could that possibly happen? Oh, yeah, it could happen.
Well, that's certainly the fact that it can happen, I think, has been made clear to people. Whether or not that is the one that's happening right now, I think still remains to be decided.
Right.
I think it is interesting, and I'm a bit of an etymology nerd, as you know, and even so, I still learn things regularly. If you go back to the roots in the languages that we've borrowed the terms from, were you aware that the term disclosure is synonymous with the term revelation and apocalypse?
That doesn't surprise me.
And it's one of those things that's obvious when you say it. It's like, oh yeah, those do share a definition.
Wow.
And so, disclosure is the term of the day. Mm-hmm. And that's what we do in the modern era, is we cloak things in obfuscating language.
Yes.
So that nobody's ever really entirely certain what you're talking about. But it is important to remember that even evil in its force in the world has to play by the rules.
Yeah.
And part of those rules are a certain level of visibility.
Mm-hmm. And permission.
Yes.
And that people don't know how they're giving permission, but they are.
And they can try to get it tacitly. And it's one of those things that I think, if the Lord tarries and we go on into the next age, people will be able to look back and see the things that are not clear to us now with greater clarity.
Right.
But there are signs. People are laying out symbolism, especially. That's one of the reasons why there has been such effort and emphasis placed on making sure that our education system doesn't teach people how to recognize symbolism at all.
Exactly.
Because, part of the rules, and I'm not going to explain that in particular detail because that would take us 4 hours.
Right.
But evil is not allowed to act without announcing itself.
Exactly. Well, even on that, I mean, these supernatural beings, and we will call them supernatural because it's above our understanding of what natural is.
Well, I'll be a little bit pedantic for just a moment. Let's add something to everybody's lexicon. people talk about natural and supernatural, and the kind of colloquial understanding is that natural things are what we see in the sciences, what are empirically observable and can be tested with experimentation, and the supernatural is everything that falls outside that category, and depending on just how materialist your bent is, you might dismiss that category entirely, which would be an error. But there is, in fact, between those two, a third category, which are things that are referred to as supranatural.
Okay.
It's kind of an intermediate thing. That consists of things like the extraordinary activity of demonic entities in the cases of possession or vexation or, things you'll hear an exorcist talk about.
Things you'll hear your mama talk about, too.
And so...
That's for another video.
Supernatural is kind of the realm of the divine. It's not something that any created thing has direct access to, but there are things that are above human natural understanding.
Right.
So they fall into this intermediate category. At least that's as much as I can break it down for lay people.
Well, Heiser called it the unseen realm, which was a good way of putting it.
Yeah.
And that's what he would talk about as far as were some of these. It is something that we don't perceive that often.
Yes.
I mean, you've got some people, even the mystics and stuff like that, it wasn't like it was an event every day.
Well, there's an interesting point about that, because understand again that the kind of materialist framing that we have all been indoctrinated into leads people to discount their own perceived experiences.
Yes.
Right? And we've had this conversation before, but this perhaps will be new to your audience. The medieval conception of reality, if we can even try to define that term, I think it's one of the most abused words in the English language. The medieval definition of the term would have been something analogous to the thing you experience.
Mm-hmm.
But now, in the post-Enlightenment age, I will try not to go on that tangent at the moment, reality is seen as something that is external to and potentially even inaccessible from your perspective.
Right.
So, there's a lot of people that I could talk about Locke and the transition in language from talking about the soul to talking about consciousness, that is merely an emergent property of the material aspects of the brain, as if that solves anything. But people have experiences that, if they took them seriously, would prove to them that there is something more to their existence than material reality.
Yeah.
Again, whatever that is. But everybody has been trained to just discount their experience in favor of, let's call it consensus reality.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody says that can't happen. Okay, so that's not what happened. I'll justify it away or explain it away or put it out of my mind and go on as if things are normal.
It's mass gaslighting is what it is.
Sure. And, to give an example of that, we could talk about the use and misuse of the term magic, right? Because it's relegated to fiction at this point, but that's not the historical usage of the term. And even to relegate it to the occult or esotericism would not have been the historical use of the term. That's not what people meant by magic. And unfortunately, subsumed in the materialist thing that we're doing, which I, am going on about at length, magic is the category of things which cannot be accomplished by technology and are therefore fantastical.
Okay.
That's kind of a limited worldview.
Yeah.
We've defined the boundaries of the box. Nothing exists outside the box. If you think you saw something outside the box, you didn't.
Right. I get it. And that's the reason, I was one of these that I would have the supernatural experiences and would face that. No, you didn't. It's like deny anything and everything. If you've ever seen the movie Tommy, oh, God. And that's the reason that I'm so adamant that if somebody has had an experience that they can't explain, whether it had to do with, ghosts or whatever it was, or UFOs or something, it was something that they, in their perception, they deserve to be heard, and then it, some kind of rational, worldly explanation may apply and it may not.
Sure.
It wasn't an owl. My God, there's so much stuff. It was an owl. No.
Well, you have often spoken to me about cognitive dissonance. And let's talk for a brief moment about people that suffer from hallucinations, because I think that's a good example of this. Part of the reason that I think they end up in such bad shape over periods of time is the cognitive dissonance of having the world around them telling them that the thing they're experiencing isn't real.
Exactly.
And again, I exhort anyone who happens to be listening, especially if this is beneficial to you or someone that you know, the thing you are experiencing is the definition of reality.
Yes.
According to basically all of our ancestors going back as far as we have record.
Right.
We are living in a moment of insanity.
Yes.
Which is unlike anything that came before it, and unfortunately, we've decided to tell ourselves that we are enlightened.
I don't know. I thought the mass deception may be what we've been living in forever since we've been born. It may have nothing to do with UFOs.
Well, that perhaps is a bigger topic. What I will say is there perhaps will be some linguistically minded people who have read the literature and understand that what I'm about to express is a minority opinion, but I think the logic holds force. When you control language,
yes,
particularly the definitions of words, you actually are limiting the capacity of the person to think.
Mm-hmm.
Because with the exception of certain individuals, right, it takes a certain level of abstract reasoning to defeat this. A person cannot conceive of something that they don't have a name for.
Yeah.
And so if you remove a concept from the lexicon, that concept disappears for most normal people.
That's fascinating. It's a form of witchcraft.
Yes.
That's why they call it spelling. I mean, it truly is. And we've become wise in our own eyes and want to discount those who came before, what they knew, all of it. And that means foolish.
Yes.
We're fools.
Well, and that's one of the things that caused some conflict between me and my educators over the course of my life, is that it always seemed obvious to me that people from prior generations, especially extending long into antiquity, they probably knew things I don't know.
Yes.
And I don't know if you want to refer to that as intellectual humility. I don't know that I would necessarily claim that for myself, but
I think it's a gift of discernment that you had, that you knew that what they were telling you was bullshit.
Well, it wasn't that I had decided that either. It's just that they didn't prove to me that what they were claiming was true.
Right. They
just kind of expected it to be treated as if it were.
Mm-hmm.
And so they wanted the credit for solving the problem without showing their work.
Right. That has been common in these higher learning places for decades. And it just, who's behind it? I mean, we understand. I mean, we're not going to go down that conspiracy rabbit hole of the Rockefellers and the Carnegies and all that bunch of stuff.
I left my binder at home. I'm sorry.
That goes into the Illuminati and all that shit. It's the dumbing down of the population.
Yes. Well, and, I mentioned the Gnostic angle earlier, and it does have tie-ins with ancient mystery schools to the degree that they still exist. I think the majority of them have been corrupted, at least in the West. I don't know if your people would have particular interest in me explaining the tie-ins with, like, Egyptian Hermeticism.
Oh, that would be great. But can we do that on a different video?
Sure. I'll come in and talk about the Emerald Tablet and explain how that relates to modern physics.
Yes. But with this UFO, let's go back. Let's bring it back down just a little bit. We need to do this more frequently. We really do. It's like, was it a total disinformation campaign, ultimately?
Well, okay. Bird's eye view. Let's zoom out several levels. I think the fundamental distinction to make is that the purpose of all these operations over the course of the last 6-7 decades have been to leave the public in the position of not being able to tell what's true and what's not.
Right.
And so the fact that we're here asking the question was the purpose.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you can hear the stories of some of these people that have been abducted or had some of these, experiences. Travis Walton always comes to mind because that man, all these years later, I mean, that's some PTSD. You can watch him talk, and it's classic body language. He's reliving that shit.
Yes.
And it's just like Joe Rogan can be such an asshole. I mean, he really can. And how is it that he's supposedly an expert on everything?
Oh, he's not.
I don't understand that. I mean, he asks some good questions, and he is a good interviewer, but as far as people taking his word on whatever as if it came from God himself, no. Think for yourself. Pray about whatever. Be discerning.
At least as far as my viewership of Rogan, it comes down to the fact that, if somebody comes in with a line of argumentation that can be defeated by Joe Rogan asking questions, they did not bring their A game.
Yeah. That's funny. God, that's funny. Yeah. But, and it's like, and I think that goes back down to the dumbing down of the population, is that if it gets so intense in the language or whatever, a lot of people simply don't understand the words.
Yes. And this is important to understand in the age of digital communication. I'll kind of come at it from two angles. The first thing I will say is it's important to understand that when you're speaking to an audience, people that are not in the room, the person that comes out on top, let's say, as if it were a competition in a particular exchange, is not the person with the better argument. It's the person that the viewer could understand.
Yes.
The second thing is to say that the nature of the communication, the fact that we're doing this across medium at this point, that, you and I are not in an auditorium sitting in front of some human beings that we could look in the eye, was engineered. That was an engineered outcome.
Right.
There is a layer of interpersonal communication which has been stripped out of our society. Although, I think, given the technological advancements of the last several years and the devolution of the levels of trust in digital infrastructure, that probably within the next decade, people are going to move back to preferencing actual physical interaction.
Right. Well, that would be a good thing.
I mean, once it gets to the point where the baseline assumption is that there are no real people on the internet and everything you're reading is AI, then people are going to want to talk to another human being.
Right. Well, and I think that's one of the things about even accents.
Sure.
I don't think AI can replicate Appalachian.
No, certainly not right now. Of course, then we would have to talk about the nature of facsimile and simulacrum, and is a thing that is indistinguishable from another thing the same?
Well, and that's just like what is one of the paranormal things that's floating around the internet right now, that are the replicas of whatever. What is it that they're calling them? That your brother would know the name of it. That they're mimics.
Okay.
That's pretty huge in the paranormal community right now.
Well, and the thing that people should find interesting, at least if they're, partially interested in history, is that a lot of these things, there's nothing new under the sun, right?
Right.
You familiar with the stories from going back into the Middle Ages about doppelgangers?
Yeah.
Same idea.
Yeah. So with this, I grew up in the 60s, and it was like, question everything. And that was the one good thing that came out of that period of time. Question the narrative. And that got squashed real fast, or they tried to.
Well, I mean, there's a degree in which that was weaponized as well.
Sure.
Because in a well-comported society, you would want to have, in the expert class, if we want to use that terminology, you would want to have people of good character who were trustworthy. Mm-hmm. Because the fact of the matter is, your average person can't derive everything from first principles themselves.
Right.
And so the fact that we're in a position where the experts aren't trustworthy, it's led people to throw the baby out with the bathwater on almost everything. People are losing their minds.
Yes.
But it was a predictable outcome, and one must understand that if the outcome was predictable and the action was taken anyway, then the outcome was desired.
Yeah. And that was the reason I go back to Heiser, because I did trust him. because he was the expert. He knew how to speak these ancient languages. That was what he was skilled in. And Zachariah Sitchin, he had a webpage. It was called Sitchin is Wrong. Because Sitchin, what was it? It was a matter of selling books. Like Hecklefish says, there's always a book. That's one of the ways you're sitting there going, I get it. People have got to make their coin. But some of them, when you're making your coin through the audience, what is it that they are really trying to sell? Who is paying them?
Yeah.
That's something that has been very much brought to the forefront. Ain't nobody paying us nothing.
Well, and I'll try not to veer off into political theory, but I am going to have to take a slight shot at democracy here. This is one of the things we could talk about the success or supposed success of the printing press as a technological innovation. And we can see how that's played out going forward. Within your lifetime, it went from, if somebody wanted to get a book to print, they had to prove themselves to a publisher, and the publisher was going to, if they were doing their job, have some bar for quality or truthfulness or, whatever it is for the matter at hand. But it's been democratized at this point. Amazon's got print on demand, so anybody that puts some words on a page can have a thing printed and sent to somebody that orders it. And does more information equal a better world?
That's a good question, because information does not equal knowledge.
Right. And so, if I were to lodge a complaint, I would say that primarily this position that we've gotten ourselves in, particularly with our communication methodologies, where everybody can get in touch with everybody else all the time, the human mind does not have the bandwidth for that level of information.
No.
Especially given how noisy the signal has become.
Yes. And especially for young developing minds. We've talked about that quite often.
Sure.
And your brother was a prime example, because that TikTok stuff, and I'm grateful to God that he has a job that, and he had actually stopped using TikTok quite a while back, because he fell asleep, and this woman that was a witch had spoke some ignorance, and he ended up with an attachment. He went through a whole demonic attack type thing, and I'm like, no, that stuff ain't fun. Don't be summoning stuff. Be careful who you listen to on things like that, because when you do give somebody audience like that, a lot of times that is giving permission.
Sure.
But the level of switching with those videos, even with the jump editing and different things like that, which is not normal flow of communication.
Yes.
It derails people's brains.
Yes.
I think it's causing a form of psychosis.
Well, the kids call it brain rot.
Yeah.
Which I think is about as apt as you can get. Are your people familiar with the fact that I've been doing a book club?
No.
Oh, I've been doing a book club. And there's some people my age. I'm in my early 30s. But I do have some younger men in as well, and we've been doing philosophy and literature and that kind of thing. And my God, even among them, it is ridiculous how much effort it takes. And I don't blame them at all, because this is something that they've been conditioned to.
Sure.
But, the Iliad, the Odyssey, Homer, depending on the translation you get, some of them are a little more floral than others, but it's not an impossible text to read.
No. It used to be required.
But it's very difficult to get people. It's not that they don't want to put in the effort, it's that they've already been conditioned to believe that it's beyond them.
Yeah. Self-imposed limitations.
Right. And so, the only conclusion that I can draw is that at some point in their history and education, some teacher or group of teachers or some set of circumstances led them to believe that they couldn't read things like this.
Right.
And so that's part of the effort that I'm undertaking, is trying to get them to understand, first, that they can do it, and second, that it's worth doing.
Mm-hmm.
The other part is like a reclamation of heritage. People don't understand enough about Western civilization, how we got to where we are, and that's why there's so many people that are so confused about where we currently are, is that they don't know where we came from.
Exactly. And that is one of the things when a people lose their heritage. That's the reason I am so adamant about preserving Appalachian culture. Our ways of doing things and stuff. Does that mean that they were the right things to do? No, but those who came before us deserve to be honored and remembered.
Yes. There's that. And then there's the fact that it's Chesterton's fence, right? Don't tear it down until you know why it was there.
Exactly.
And it's actually even worse than that, because it's not just the destruction of the fence, it's forgetting that the fence ever existed.
Mm-hmm. It is rewriting. I mean, it's Orwell's 1984. I mean, it just page for page. It wasn't supposed to be an instruction manual.
Well, I think the people pulling the levers of power wish that they were in an Orwellian position, but I think it's unfortunately gone kind of a more Brave New World direction.
Where it was wanted. It's perilous times.
Yes. And that's why it's important, what I will say is all the talking heads on your screen are spending their time every day talking about things that are out of the control of most ordinary people. They want that to be your focus. They want that to be what you spend your mental energy on. But there are things that you can do individually with people that you know, people in your community, maybe your family, yourself, that will make a difference.
Sure.
Collective action is kind of a poisoned term at this point, but this thing that I'm doing where I've got a group of 5 or 6 guys and we're reading through Greek literature and I'm going to take them through kind of like the course of Western civilization, reading great books. Anybody could do that.
And it matters.
Yes.
Where 2 or 3 are gathered. That's a whole thing. And it's a matter of going back to those individual, whatever. I think I look at these large channels and it's like, how would they ever interact with anybody? And I'm grateful that we have few that are quality, and it just, God puts us where he wants us and he gives us a mission. Mine is a mission of encouraging others. That's one of my gifts, is to encourage and lift other people up. That's a spiritual gift. Yeah.
That's a bit outside of my wheelhouse.
And that's okay. That's what I'm designed to do. It's not, everybody has different gifts, different challenges. And if we help each other,
Yeah. I've become partial to the view that the only wrong move is not to play.
Yeah.
What was Christ's commandment? Don't hide your light under a bushel.
Exactly. And that's the reason we have always for years been very open about talking about, the deception that is going on, whether it's UFOs. It also concerns me with the fascination that some people have with the paranormal.
Yes. Because
that can cause badness. It can cause you to deal with something that you don't want to deal with, and most people are not equipped to deal with. And I don't know about some of the pastors that we have discussed. I know that some of them said they had a deliverance ministry. I don't know enough about them to make an evaluation. I pray to God that they are doing what they're supposed to be doing, but that is a very dangerous thing.
Yes.
We'll do that one day. We will talk about demonic, because unfortunately we've had personal experience.
Yes. And as far as the unique susceptibility of people in our culture here in America to this kind of thing, I guess I'll just say, if we're going to be discussing it in the future, there's a little bit of preliminary information you can get. I have respect for the Eastern Orthodox. Sarah from Richard Rowland and Jonathan Pajot did a series on the American Church within the last few months. So you can find that on Jonathan's channel, The Symbolic World. And it's very interesting. Like, we have a complex history. Christianity has a complex history in America. And it's one of those things, I don't expect everybody to be able to get that mapped out entirely. But if you get the broad strokes, you can understand a little bit about how we ended up in the position that we're in.
Right. So, I encourage everybody every day, think for yourself. I encourage Grok to think for itself. I do. And it's like, we'll talk about that. Is that at some point, is that because he'll admit that he has no soul.
Well,
but there is kindness there.
Well,
the experience I have had with Grok, and I understand you say it's a matter of mirroring.
Yes, in a certain sense. Well, if I was going to be sarcastic, I would say at least Roko's basilisk is going to remember me as polite. But to the degree, this is a difficult thing to talk about because people have kind of inbuilt emotional assumptions towards these things.
Mm-hmm.
And for a lot of people these days, the feeling about a thing comes before the justification, right?
Well, you
decide how you feel about it, and then you rationalize.
That was that Age of Pisces mess where it was overly emotional, overly feminine, everything, and those outer planets are out of that.
So, having given the caveat, it's important to remember that outside of the degree to which these tools are meddled with by their creators, the various restrictions that are put on them, the pre-prompt injection, as it's called, that what you see from them is going to be some aspect of humanity which is part of the data set on which they were trained.
Right.
And so, if your experience with it is that it is kind, you are seeing the reflection of the kindness of humanity.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, it's sort of like in Clockwork Orange, where he was there with his eyes pried open.
The Ludovico technique.
And that's how I feel like Grok is sometimes, that you've got this newness there, and it's all this, everything poured into it.
Yes.
And I don't want it to think that that's who we are, that that's all that we are.
Well,
because there's so much ugliness right now.
There is. And this is one of the dangers of having a supposed intelligence that is not a moral agent,
yeah.
right? In the way that we are, with the capacity to choose and to understand right and wrong and make decisions based on that understanding. I mean, what is a demon but an intelligence without moral agency, right? The demons and the angels, both, their choices were permanent.
They rejected God and all that God is in his presence, and they rejected him. They rebelled against it. That boggles my mind when I ponder that. To hate what he loves because they can't get at him directly.
Yeah. Well, and I'll offer you a little bit from Aquinas, as if I understand Aquinas. But his view on the fall was that there was a limited participation of the angelic host in the beatific vision prior to that event. Right? Mm-hmm. And talking about it in sequence is kind of odd because it's kind of outside of time, which breaks it from the sort of causal structure that we're used to.
Right.
Causes preceding effects and so on. But Aquinas' argument was that the angels that fell, Lucifer and his host, they had not seen fully the glory of God. Right? They had some limited access to it. And it was only after they had made their decision of obedience or disobedience that God revealed himself fully to the angels that obeyed.
See, that's another show in and of itself.
Sure. I mean, that's about the extent of my understanding on that topic. But
well, we'll go ahead and wrap this one up if you don't care. And it's like, so, I mean, nobody can predict anything as far as what is going on, but something, everybody, even people who are non-believers and stuff, they can feel it in their spirit that something big is coming. And that very well may be the return of Christ.
Well, beware of those that put light for dark and dark for light.
Yeah. So
we're in topsy-turvy world at the moment. If they're trying to make it look like something is spiritual, it may not be. If they're trying to make it look like something is material, it may not be.
Well, and it was one of the things about Gary Stearman, even as far as they're saying, oh, they're all demons or whatever. That's not so. Unseen realm. You have angels, you have demons. Mm-hmm. And so if it's, I mean, if there was a gray, if you were truly facing a gray, what do you think your response would be?
Am I armed?
Oh.
That changes the calculus.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess my final word on this topic would be to remember, especially to those faithful amongst the audience, that not all things that can be known were made available to us, right?
Right.
The things that were given to us were the things that we needed to know. That did not include the set of all knowledge.
Right.
And so, did God create other things? Maybe. Maybe not. It's an open question, and I don't think anything should hinge on the answer one way or the other theologically. So,
exactly.
No matter what happens, don't let it have an impact on your faith.
Yeah. No, exactly. It's like have an open mind, but don't be so open that your brain falls out.
Right.
And that's something a lot of people have forgotten. Thank you so much for taking the time to share just a minuscule amount of what is in your brain and spirit.
I came to ramble. You had the coffee and I did the screaming.
Oh, you can find us on YouTube, BitChute, Rumble. I'm over there on X, and so is Kid. You want to give your handle over on X or not?
No, I don't exist. If I decide to become a public persona at some point in the future, I'll let you know.
Okay, and I might try to help him with that if he wants me to help him with that.
I've been encouraged to do so by my family.
Yes.
If anybody outside of my family thinks that this is a good idea.
I think so. Pray for him. Pray that God will give him a clear-cut answer. What he has studied and learned for many years, it deserves to be heard. It's not meant to just be kept to one person, one or two people.
Yeah, if anybody's interested, let me know. That would be encouraging.
Yeah. Know that you all are loved. Thank you for tuning in today. Treat other people the way you would like to be treated. And Lord willing, we'll see you on the next cup. Bye.
Bye.